Namaskar everyone, my name is Aarav Saxena. I am from class 8th A. Today I am going to be presenting my PPT on the unsung heroes of 1857. I have chosen the unsung hero as Maulvi Ahmadullah Shah. I have chosen him to support the bonding between the Muslim and Hindu community. Thank you. Now, let's move on to the main slide of Maulvi Ahmadullah Shah. Maulvi Ahmadullah Shah. He was born in the 1820 in the second decade of the 19th century when the British rule was kept on extending and extending. His real name was Sayyid Ahmad Ali Khan alias Ziauddin, titled Dilawar Jang. He was the son of Nawab Muhammad Ali Khan of Chinnapattan, Madras. He received as a prince the best education of the time. He completed his studies in classical languages and traditional Islamic sciences, tafsir, hadith, fiqh, and logic. And he also received an extensive training in the art of warfare, which we see later comes in handy during the war he fought. He seems to have acquired knowledge of English. As an enterprising young prince, his fame reached far and wide, and that was also a major point why the British were looking for him. He was practicing Muslim as he was in Hindu, and he supported religious unity. The imperialist British really admired the brave man of his skills and bravery. Still, because of his fame, his knowledge, and his skills, they put a $50,000 bounty for anyone who could found him and take him to the British government. This was also a major part because the British knew that in the future he was going to become a very major target or enemy for them. This was enough proclamation for Maulvi Ahmadullah Shah to prove how anxious the British were to catch him. His deeds and actions were even admired by the man himself, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. The life of this brave Mohammedan shows that a rational faith in the doctrines of Islam is in no way inconsistent with the antagonistic to a deep and all-powerful love of the Indian soil, wrote Savarkar. Mainly, the Mr. Vinayak Damodar Savarkar meant that this powerful Mohammedan Maulvi Ahmadullah Shah, he was a man who supported religious unity. He had very good knowledge in the Islam. He was a very antagonistic man. For example, a hero. Who had a deep and powerful love of the Indian soil and was fighting for freedom. Maulvi Ahmadullah Shah, after completing his studies, became a talukdar in Faizabad. His taluk was confiscated by the government shortly after the annexation of Awadh, as the government wanted to catch him. This angered Maulvi, vowed to purge his motherland of foreign domination and made it a mission of his life that only ended on June 5th, 1858, which we will later see in the slide that how he died. By taking his taluk, the British government made a very severe mistake which angered him. There were several others who had been equally wronged by the colonialists, but Maulvi Ahmadullah proved himself a hard nut to crack for the colonialists. For example, like I said previously in this slide, that the British really admired the brave man of his skills and bravery. Still, they put a $50,000 bounty for anyone who could found him and take him to the British government. And as I said, the British knew that he would become a huge target later on, and this became right. The Maulvi proved himself that he was not a very weak, or you can say the one who gets scared easily, like the other freedom fighter. He was a very brave one, even though the British admired him themselves. He travelled through large parts of northern India, visited Agra, Delhi, Meerut, and etc., preparing ground for an enormous revolt, which was later going to result in the revolt of 1857. During his travels, he devised a novel scheme known as the Chapati scheme. Chapati scheme was like any other scheme which was devised to disseminate the message among the rural population as they didn't have any radios or didn't get any newspapers as the Britishers did not print the good news which was against them. He also he also made newspapers and many other things. He appointed and hired North Indian men and many other of his friends to deliver this message amongst the rural population who would not get even a message for that. This would make a great uprising opportunity for him for the huge enormous revolt coming upon the slide now. The circulation of chapatis from hand to hand was easy and was not likely to cause any suspicion as they had to do the work undercover so the British would know his move. In Lucknow, Ahmedullah mounted an attack on the defences of Sir James Outram outside Alambagh. The Governor General dispatched Sir Colin Campbell in place of Outram to fight and flush out the rebels, as the British believed he would not be in hard nut to crack, and they underestimated him. Ahmedullah retreated to Rohilkhand and went on to seize Shahjapur. On his way to Shahjapur, he was joined by the Raja of Mohammadi and Mian Sahib, one of the chiefs of Lucknow, which later led Lucknow in the revolt of 1857, who each heading a considerable body of armed men and a huge army. Ahmadullah Shah reached Shahjapur on May 3rd, 1858 with nearly 8,000 cavalry, which was enough for him to march to the British. Sir Colin marched to Shahjapur and defeated the rebellious troops, but for some reason Ahmadullah managed to escape and then raided Pali. Sir Colin Campbell called him a formidable army. Ahmadullah Shah created so much terror by his activities in the hearts of the English that Lord Canning, the Governor General of India at that time, had to offer a reward of 50,000 on his head. After this, he then walked a few miles from Pali to solicit some support from Jagannath Singh, who later turned out to be very treacherous for the money, who was also the Raja of Pavayan. In fact, the Raja himself had requested him to personally come to the fort. Ahmadullah Shah was not planning to go there. Ahmadullah approached the fort as he believed and had trust and faith in him. He approached the fort at Pavayan on a war elephant. The treacherous Raja refused to open the gate and instead opened fire on Ahmadullah and shot him dead. Thus, a great patriotic story was brought to an abrupt end on the heads of a coward black sheep. It is said that Jagannath Singh had invited him with a premeditated object of winning the award. This incident occurred nearly 2 months after the reward of rupees 50,000 when it was announced for Ahmadullah's capture. However, it is worthy of notice that not a single man fighting under his command was ever induced to kill him for a hefty reward of 50,000 rupees, which were allotted that time, which was also a very huge and enormous amount. So this is how a great patriot, freedom fighter, even words come short for this man. The story of him was ended by a treacherous black covered sheep. So thank you everyone. Jai Hind.